This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi and continuing coverage of the case against Bryan Kohberger.
From day one, the Bryan Kohberger case felt less like a straightforward true crime story and more like some twisted psychological puzzle. Tailor-made for a Netflix special, minus the popcorn. But here's the kicker. Instead of unraveling, this puzzle has only gotten more complicated, more haunting, and somehow more infuriating. Kohberger's sudden decision to plead guilty threw a true crime community into a tailspin, and just as we were bracing ourselves for the spectacle of a trial, he stepped off the ride, took control, and basically said, "I'll decide how this ends, not you." But why? Today we're diving deep into the psychological maze behind Kohberger's choice. Joining me to unpack the twisted journey is retired FBI special agent and former chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, Robin Dreeke. Robin's expertise in reading what makes dangerous people tick is precisely what we need to decode this bizarre final chapter of Kohberger's public story with. In our conversation, we're going to explore how control, something Kohberger clearly craves but consistently failed to achieve, may have played a central role in his plea. This wasn't about avoiding death or sparing his family the agony of a trial. This was Kohberger's way of reclaiming the narrative, asserting dominance in a situation where he'd lost all power. Robin sheds new light on how his plea might have offered Kohberger exactly what he'd been missing: the chance to orchestrate his own future behind bars, even if that future means becoming a permanent fixture in criminal psychology textbooks. But what's most chilling about this discussion isn't just the why, it's the what's next. Robin and I break down whether Kohberger's upcoming sentencing could mirror the infamous Dennis Rader BTK spectacle. Could Kohberger, who idolized serial killers, follow Rader's footsteps, using the courtroom as his personal stage to meticulously detail his atrocities? Or will he carefully guard his secrets, drip-feeding them over the time to maintain his twisted brand of notoriety? And finally, we'll confront perhaps the darkest question yet. Does Bryan Kohberger pose a continued threat behind bars? If killing provided him the emotional thrill he'd been chasing his entire life, what happens now that he's permanently confined among others, people who might not see him as a criminal, but as a trophy? But before we get into all of that, let's address the elephant in the room: control. Robin, how much do you think this elusive, intoxicating concept of control factored into Kohberger's sudden guilty plea? Control. How much do you think that calculated into this choice as well? Because it was fairly out of control for him. Everything he was trying to throw at the wall and stick did not. This is the first one where, okay, he's got control of everything, basically. It's done. He threw the towel in. Now he can go forward and be in control of certain things, obviously not his freedom, but if somebody wants to study him, talk to him, he's going to get to go down that road. And putting him back in control, I wonder how much that of the emotions that he does have, control is likely one of them, and something that he certainly was not having any sort of grip on in recent years.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and I agree. Regaining control of more of his life than he's had, probably definitely a motivation factor as well. That's why he seemed pretty comfortable yesterday with everything, because he felt, again, I think he always just likes to plan the path forward.
Yeah,
and he wasn't able to plan the path forward too much just because everything was in chaos, because he was in chaos. But now that it's got resolution and moving forward, it's stabilized that crazy brain.
Pure speculation on this. Sentencing is going to be coming up. I'll check my notes. July 23rd and possibly the 24th at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. They have the extra day in there in case they need it for the victim impact statements. Do you think we're going to see a repeat of what we saw with Dennis Rader? Considering the connections here. I mean, Catherine Ramsland, the one that wrote the book on him, now looks like she's probably going to write the book on Kohberger. That's my conjecture out of it. I would not be surprised at all. But BTK was one who, in his sentencing, at the very last minute, did the same thing, stood up and said, I did it. We don't have to do the trial now. And admitted, but then in sentencing, went through it. 45-minute recitation about everything that he did. Do you think we're going to see Kohberger stand up and attempt to do that at the impact statements, or is this a different animal where he's going to cower and be very selective at where and how he shares his story?
Boy, that's a great unknown, Tony. I could see both. I really can. You know, he very much studied and emulated to different degrees people like BTK. So you're going to think he's going to want to do that, especially since BTK was so well interviewed after the fact in prison, in jail, like Kohberger most likely wants to have happen. At the same time, though, you want to be able to control a lot. I mean, also BTK had a lifespan of doing this. So he had a lot of things and details he could leak out over time and maintain control over a larger period of time because his empire of killing was so vast.
Yeah.
Kohberger's is very, very narrow. So he doesn't have a whole lot he can leak. So if he leaks it all at the sentencing, then he's got nothing left in the barrels, basically. He may say a little something to kind of whet the appetite and maintain control without losing his only reservoir of tools he has to maintain interest. Because remember, that's what these guys do. They want to maintain their own control over their own notoriety and grandiosity. So they're going to be very covetous of the leakage they give. BTK, again, being really, really good at doing just that and holding things in reserve. And when you have someone like Kohberger, where you only got what, but I don't mean to diminish it all, where you have 4 murders, most likely not over a span of time. We're thinking, wise, this is his first and only. He's going to be covetous of holding as much as he can in, I would think.
Yeah, and do you think does he get joy would he get joy out of telling the families exactly what he did? Because I don't, with BTK, I struggle with it. I don't know that Dennis Rader was getting joy out of torturing those families and telling what he did. I think it was more so I'm proud of the length and the craft. And that's a really weird way of using the word, but the craft of what he did and was able to get away with it, because those were unsolved forever. This was solved. I mean, so there isn't like the revealing of everything. Other than you forgot a knife sheath. It's pretty clear what you did. You got a knife and you stabbed these kids and you forgot your sheath.
So again, it's really interesting. Whatever he does, he's not doing it to get at someone. Yeah. In other words, if all of a sudden he came out at the sentencing and did just that, and he gives a full, we call it a full Monty on talking about exactly what he did, why he did it, it wouldn't be out of vengeance towards the families or to get them, because it's not about, everything's about him and his response. I would imagine if he did anything at all and gave any statement at all, it'd be him experimenting with, can this cause an emotional response in me? How do I feel when I do this? Does this make me feel better? Does I get, so in other words, it wouldn't be done to jab at them. It'd be done for his benefit in some way to maybe experiment with, does this work? Does this, because remember, that's what he's been doing, is he's been experimenting his whole life. Yeah. This whole thing to me is one big experiment on, can I get an emotional response? He keeps dabbling in this. Let me try drugs. Let me try this. Let me do this. Let me murder a couple kids and see if that works. Yeah. And so everything comes down to him as an experiment for a reaction. And so if he does, it's not an intended for anything but himself.
If murder is what made him tick, what made him feel life, made him get some sort of emotion.
If it did.
Let's say if it did. Is Kohberger a risk to the population in prison? If that's what gets him off, and I'm not speaking, maybe it is sexual, I don't know. Is that someone who obviously he has nothing to lose anymore? I mean, if killing is his thing, I don't know that I want to be in a cell with this guy.
That's interesting too, because he's got a history now of violence, up close and personal violence with a knife, so that clearly doesn't bother him. The lack of fellow prisoners to be able to read him is also going to be a challenge. But at the same time, though, he took the lives of kids,
Yeah.
which, I don't know if it in the prison system it puts you in the same light as a pedophile in a prison system. But I've heard some people comment on some social media streams that he won't last a month in jail before he's murdered.
I put a poll out, actually.
So now that, to me, I'm not advocating anything
No,
illegal.
I'm not either, but I was curious.
You can imagine at least two families feeling really, really justified by that.
Oh, completely. Yeah. In fact, by the time this airs, the poll is probably going to have different numbers on it, but
What's your poll say?
that was my question, because I made some choice comments about a broomstick the other day when I was referencing Dahmer and Kohberger in the same sentence. I'm not endorsing it by any means, but, I get the anger. What we're looking at here right now, how long until Kohberger is removed from this planet through prison justice is the question that I posed.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Before New Year's, that is leading at 31.1%. In a close second, 2027 and never are tied at 26.2%. 2026 is at 16.4%. So you're kind of in the area of it'll be a little bit to never, or it's going to happen right away.
So they could actually put him in isolation for his own protection,
which
too.
they probably will, and probably need to do for several years.
I wonder if Vegas has odds on him yet.
Do they do that for like this sort of shit?
They do it for everything.
They got odds
they?
for everything. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, again, not endorsing that, but it's certainly the vileness of this crime.
I know two families who might be.
Yeah, I put some money down. I'd see if there's there's
This is the most hard. This is, it's funny. I thought there'd be a feeling of relief when this one was done, but I
don't know.
A lot of horrible emotions on this one.
I think one of the worst things is that picture, that thumbs up in the shower.
Oh,
it's real. It is. He did it. He took the picture for that reason. It's everything
100%.
we speculated on is true.
Yep. 100%.
Stepping back from my conversation with Robin Dreek, it's clear we're not just dealing with a cold-blooded killer. We're dealing with someone whose twisted motives stretch far beyond violence. Bryan Kohberger's decision to plead guilty was unsettling precisely because it feels like another calculated move on a chessboard he built for himself. It wasn't remorse. It wasn't redemption. It was control, pure and simple. Control over his narrative, control over the next phase of his life, and perhaps most chillingly, control over his own infamy. Robin's insights about Kohberger's motivations were particularly haunting. Think about it. The plea deal wasn't just about avoiding death. It was about Kohberger reclaiming his autonomy in a world that had reduced him to a courtroom spectacle. For someone like him, freedom might not mean the outside world. It might mean the power to choose his interactions, select his visitors, dictate the flow of information, and decide who gets access to his twisted mind. Kohberger didn't surrender. He seized the steering wheel. And now we're along for the ride. As Robin highlighted, the upcoming sentencing process poses another disturbing question. Will Kohberger follow the path of BTK's Dennis Rader, using the courtroom as a stage to painstakingly detail every gruesome act he committed? Or will he strategically withhold the worst details, doling them out piece by piece to prolong his spotlight? Whatever he chooses, it will be self-serving. It won't be an act of contrition. It won't be an apology. It will be a performance. One last chilling manipulation. And let's not overlook the practical dangers. Robin raised the unsettling prospect of Kohberger in prison. If murder was his twisted attempt to feel alive, what's stopping him from continuing this deadly experiment behind bars? It's a grim thought. We've seen prison justice before. Jeffrey Dahmer did not survive it. Is Kohberger now entering an environment where his past atrocities become a ticking time bomb? Will the other inmates see him as a monster or an opportunity? And frankly, how long before someone decides prison justice is their way of closing a case the courts didn't quite finish?
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi and continuing coverage of the case against Bryan Kohberger.
Let's get real. We spent nearly 3 years analyzing the case against Bryan Kohberger. breaking down the evidence, the courtroom strategies, a psychological profile, and every bizarre detail from the affidavit to the alibi that wasn't. And now we're staring down the final stretch. No trial, no cross-examination, no moment of reckoning in a jury. Just a courtroom plea and a sentencing date. If you think this plea means the story is over, you haven't been paying attention. Because what we're looking at now isn't just a legal end, it's the opening chapter of how Bryan Kohberger will be remembered, studied, and yes, possibly mythologized. And that's where things start to feel slippery. This is the part where it stops being about, did he do it? It becomes a question of why. Why did he want this outcome? Why did the state agree to it? And why does it feel like, despite the life sentence, he got exactly what he wanted? I'm curious to get your thoughts as we go through this in the comments section on YouTube. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi if you're not already there. If you're on the podcast platform, hit subscribe, please. But do check us out on YouTube as well. Today, I'm joined again by defense attorney and by defense attorney Bob Motta, who doesn't mince words and doesn't sugarcoat it. We're going to dive deep into the state's motivation for possibly wanting to avoid this trial altogether, not because the evidence wasn't strong, but because the fallout, the appellate future, the emotional and political cost of dragging this through the courtroom for months might have been too high for a small-town DA's office to bear. And yeah, we go there. We talk about Kohberger's likely mindset in taking that deal. The disturbing possibility that a lifetime behind bars wasn't a punishment, but a goal. And how that puts him in the same macabre lineage as Bundy, Kemper, Gacy, and yes, BTK. We also confront the harsh reality that while this case is technically closed, the families, especially Steve Gonzalez, are left asking why no one sat down with them and explained this face-to-face. Because justice delivered through a PDF isn't justice, it's bureaucracy wearing a mask. So let's jump into it right at the moment when I ask Bob the question that is still bugging me. Did the state ever really want this case to go to trial? Do you think the state wanted to deal with this case from the beginning? I mean, that's kind of something I look back on this a little bit. I know some others have as well. I mean, they tore the house down. I mean, the DA is the DA. The police, I think, did a great job on this. As much as we were criticizing them at the very beginning, like, what the hell's going on here? They had their stuff together behind the scenes. Yeah. The DA's office seems to be a little more questionable on how, I think, how all this was handled behind the scenes. Do you think they really wanted this? Or were they really kind of hoping all along that, maybe we can get a plea, get this done with, and wash our hands of this horrible, horrible thing that's in front of us?
I think that's true of any prosecution team. I mean, you're talking about you've got, number one, remember that's a political office that's held. And I thought Hitler did a fabulous job of kind of giving people a civics lesson at the beginning of that plea hearing yesterday. Like our followers, and we had a lot in chat yesterday as we were streaming that live. They were like, "Oh, get to it." I'm like, this is where I want you to listen.
Yeah.
Because this judge is explaining how the process works. Because I say it all the time and it comes off as cold, but the reality is emotion has no place in the law. Mm-hmm. It's not what this process is about. Of course, that doesn't mean that you're not empathetic, but in terms of the process in and of itself, there is no room for emotion in there. It's a cold place.
Yeah.
And you've got to deal with the facts and the evidence. And you've got to deal with everything else that comes with that. And we're talking about Latah County, Idaho. We're talking about a town that has a university that is the heartbeat of that town. So, yeah, man, there's a huge part of that is taken into consideration. Do you think that the University of Idaho wanted that fucking trial going on, man, for 3 months while their kids are in class? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like the thing was starting August 18th, matriculated, like the kids are coming back.
Yeah.
You think, even though it's an Ada, even though they moved it, You know, it's like, it's one of those cases that would haunt them forever.
And that's the thing. Even if they had gone on with trial, and let's say he was found guilty, you're exactly right. The appellate issues would have gone on forever, probably till Steve dies. You know, and Kohberger's still alive just because of the age difference there.
Yep.
I agree. It's like big picture, right thing was done. Emotions, all of it on the surface, 1,000% understand Steve and agree with him at this moment in time. But
100%.
Bigger, calmer, rational thinking. Yeah.
And I hope Steve gets there. I do. I really, he deserves that. He deserves a modicum of peace, because like, look, the reality of these cases, man, is that nothing is bringing the loved ones back in these cases. Nothing. It doesn't exist. The best that we can do is to punish those that commit the crimes. And, you know, I saw a lot of tweets out there like justice was not done. Well, it was done, you know, and that's like when you strip away the differentiation between an eye for an eye and what justice is, you know, and I've said it a million times. I mean, to me, there is no worse punishment than spending your life in a box. I don't give a shit. Like 60 years in a box, Tony, that's some real shit. Like, I don't care if they get to eat 3 meals a day. They have to keep them alive in order to continue to punish them. I don't care if they get to watch a TV for a couple hours. They never get to do all the things that we take for granted in our lives and our daily lives ever again. It to me is the most, I would rather die than live 60 years in a box.
And I agree with that on most, for us, 1,000%. I could not do it. But to someone like a Kohberger, I almost feel like there's a Hannibal Lecter aspect to this, where he's kind of enjoying it, where there's some pleasure in what should be punishment, because now he's going to be studied for the rest of his life. Ramsland already said the other night with Bryan, like, I'd be interested in studying him if he'd have me, and it would be a very interesting study without a doubt. But again, it's like giving in and giving him what he wants at the same point of being infamous. He's now there. He's there with Bundy. He's there with Kemper. He's there with everybody. Gacy. Exactly. In the infamy line of serial killers. He is there. And I think I don't know that the box phases him all that much, to be completely honest, as it would to most.
You can't compare for Kohberger comparing during the process.
Yeah.
Where he's still in the limelight, to the reality.
Yeah, I hear you.
Once that prison door fucking hits shut for the last time, there's a finality to it that changes that mindset. And it's funny you said that. If you were to go back and listen to my initial coverage of Bryan Kohberger in that case, I said the exact same thing that you just said.
Yeah,
I was of the mindset that I thought that he was desirous of all the things that you just said so much that I was refusing to say his name.
Yeah.
I would not name him.
I remember that. Yeah.
A year.
Yeah.
And then finally, once the case kind of like got legs, I'm like, you know what? There's no point. Like, people are not going to know who I'm talking about. So like, I had to start, but like, I agree, man. I think there is an element to this guy that is you're spot on, man. Like this guy. But here's the thing is that if you look at a vast majority of these guys with Ed Kemper and Fish being, which was in the early 1900s, where they're just not honest with any of the people that are studying them. Like Ramsland's wonderful. I love what she tries to do.
Yeah.
But if you've got people that are just not being honest about a situation, or the other part of it is, you know, this guy's fucking broken mentally. Yeah. He is not a normal person. He is not you and I. He is not. Yeah. People don't understand how you can do this. And I'm like, okay, well, it's because we don't understand how the human mind works at all. We have very little knowledge about how the brain actually works and functions. And in this type of situation, you're trying to get answers from somebody who doesn't know the answers himself as to why he's broken. He has no fucking idea. why his mind is like the way it is.
Yeah.
Like, to be compelled, because you going into this, you have to imagine how obsessive he was, how obsessively he was thinking about doing this.
Sure.
For months, maybe years.
Yeah.
That it was at the forefront of his mind. That like he had this compulsion to do this thing that we will never understand. And if he can't understand why he's that way, no one else is going to be like, he's not going to be able to give honest answers. You know, did he ever battle like in part of the Gacy tapes when my father was preparing him for his insanity defense case, you know, there were glimmers of truth in there. You know, and like towards the end when Gacy got really sloppy with Rob Peast and kind of broke his typical MO and, you know, just snatched this kid where it was clear that they were going to put together that Gacy was the last person that saw him. And, you know, that ended his reign of terror. And, you know, when he talked about it, he was like, at that point in his evil career of killing, you know, he had realized that he couldn't stop himself. And, you know, he was like exhausted because that guy would literally work all day as a contractor. And then like his kill time was like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. in the morning after he'd work all day and then go troll for victims and then bring them back and do whatever he did. And then he'd get up at 7. The guy would sleep like an hour and he did it for years. And, you know, but he finally realized that, you know, he was trying to work more in the hopes that he'd sleep so that he wouldn't do what he was doing. Like there was a part of it and it wasn't remorse.
Yeah.
It was like exhaustion for him. Like it's just that their minds are so cracked and fractured and broken in a way that us as normal human beings, and we all have fucked up heads,
sure,
one way or another. We all deal with our own shit, but this is a completely different thing. You can't really even categorize what they are, you know, in terms of how their mind works, because we just can't contemplate it. We just don't understand it. We don't, is it, you know, a synaptic thing where things aren't firing, or have they reached some other part of the brain that
yeah,
most of us just don't access? Is it nature versus nurture? Is it both?
Usually a little bit of everything, and that's what makes them all a little bit something. This conversation left you feeling unsettled. Good, because the truth is the Kohberger plea isn't just as wrapped in a neat bow. It's more like a tourniquet, stopping the bleeding without really healing the wound. Bob laid out what many legal experts have been quietly saying for months. The prosecution may have had the evidence, but not necessarily the stomach or the resources for the war that was coming. A trial this big, this high profile, in a small jurisdiction like Latah County. I know it was moved to Boise. It was always going to be a logistical and emotional bloodbath. And the moment the University of Idaho students returned for the fall semester, that pressure wasn't just legal, it was political, economic, and institutional. Nobody wanted this trial hanging over the town like a fog of death for 3 more months or 3 more years on appeal. But while the state might have avoided chaos, Bryan Kohberger still walks away with the slickest possible consolidation prize. And it's not rice-a-roni, the San Francisco treat. Oh, maybe it should be. Laced with cyanide. Here, have some rice, Bryan. It's delicious. No, he walked away with control. The control to avoid death. The control to keep his secrets. The control to become the subject of a study, not just the subject of a courtroom. Infamy instead of anonymity. And make no mistake, he knows exactly what lane he's in now. It's the Bundy, Kemper, BTK lane. That lonely corridor where men like this get to live on in interviews, books, and documentaries, while the victims' families get to relive their worst days forever. And Bob's absolutely right. You can study these people all you want, but most of them won't ever give you real answers. Not because they're hiding something, but because they're genuinely don't know. You can't pull logic from a fractured mind. You can't humanize a brain that doesn't function the way ours does. And yet we try, because the alternative is to admit that evil sometimes just is. And that's a little too bleak for most people to sit with for long. So what now? Well, Kohberger will be sentenced, the families will speak, and if we're lucky, he won't. Whether he's silent or not, we'll still be talking about this for years, because this case didn't just change lives, it changed how we think about justice, punishment, and the uncomfortable gray area where someone can admit to 4 murders and still walk away with exactly what he wanted.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi and continuing coverage of the case against Bryan Kohberger.
What's really disturbing, that that last piece there on the intro, if you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. If you're listening to it on the podcast, it was an image of Kohberger's bathroom shot with the thumbs up that everybody speculated, going, oh my God, is that real? I mean, it is real, but oh my God, if he killed him, how disturbing is it that shot of him in the bathroom with the thumbs up, what the hell is that? And we speculated early on, like, is this a nod to American Psycho? Because he kind of looks like that. The thumbs up is Bundy. The fact it's a shower Psycho. There's a lot in that shot, and we had actually thrown it into AI, and it animated it where he kind of waves his thumb a little bit, and it's pretty haunting and scary. But he did that. He killed those 4 people, then a few hours later took the shot. 1,000% happened. God. There's a lot of pieces in this now that we know he's guilty, now that he's admitted his guilt, that are now coming to fruition and are coming to light from earlier chapters in this. And it just kind of blows your mind. Like, oh my God, that they did do it like this. We've all heard chilling phrases. He seems so normal. It's become the unsettling cliche in true crime. The neighbor, the friend, the student who once suspected could not ever commit horrific crimes, but then they do. And the perplexing, deeply troubling saga of Bryan Kohberger. That phrase took center stage yet again, recently echoed by one of the most renowned criminal psychology experts around, Dr. Catherine Ramsland. Ramsland, of course, famous for her close study of serial killers, including the notorious BTK killer. She's been on our show before talking about it. She's been unable to talk about the case against Kohberger until now. Yeah. She sat down for a rare and revealing interview with News Nation's Brian Enton to unpack her experiences teaching Bryan Kohberger directly, back when he was just another eager, intelligent student rather than an infamous accused murderer. During their conversation, Ramsland described a bright, polite student who never raised a single red flag. There were no flashing neon signs that screamed, "Killer in training!" Just a diligent scholar with a fascination for the intricacies of crime, capable of digging into the darkest corners of human psychology without revealing any darkness of his own. But here's the uncomfortable twist. Ramsland herself now openly wonders if Kohberger absorbed her teachings about antisocial personalities and criminal minds not as tools for good, but rather it's like a sinister manual, weaponizing knowledge that she hoped would be used to prevent crimes, not be used to commit them. And it's not her fault by any means, because Catherine has inspired thousands of people over the years to do the right thing, to get into criminal justice, to get into the FBI, to get into all sorts of fields and areas of study in this area to do good. By sheer numbers, you're going to have one that slips through the cracks. You're going to have one that's in there for the wrong reasons, and you are not going to be able to identify it. Even the best in the world. raises an unsettling question we all have to grapple with. Can our best intentions, our best education, inadvertently provide the keys to violence for someone already predisposed to harm? And the answer is yes. But so can the world. He just happened to get really, really close to some of the best. Not a lot of people are able to do that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments as we dive into our conversation here with Siobhan Scott. Comment section is on YouTube, so if you want to join us over there, just search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, and you can comment away on our conversation or conversations, because there's a lot of videos. We have hundreds of videos with Siobhan talking about all different cases, and check them out. You'll love it on our YouTube channel, Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. And do hit subscribe there, too, if you don't mind. Really appreciate it. So joining me to unravel this troubling psychological puzzle is psychotherapist Siobhan Scott. Years of experience delving into the darkest corners of the human psyche. Siobhan's going to help us explore the line between fascination and fixation, education and exploitation. Started by asking her the question many of us were pondering: how can someone like Kohberger so completely mask their violent intent, even from an expert like Catherine Ramsland herself? Catherine Ramsland finally has broken her silence on this case. She spoke to News Nation's Brian Enton just the other night about what she could on the case. There are still things she can't talk about because of, I forget the term, but it's like HIPAA almost for teachers and students, where there's certain things you can't discuss. But she was able to talk about her interaction somewhat with her feelings about him. And she came out and said there really wasn't any red flags for the most part. He seemed very much, as a student of hers, that he was very astute, very polite, very interested, very passionate, had the mental capacity to really get into the information that they were studying and contextualize it and dig deep into it. Not the... I wasn't expecting her to be like, he was eager to kill and just learned how to fly the plane up and not fly it down. It wasn't like that. What do you take? Are you surprised by that at all? Or is that kind of what you would think that this person would have been like if you were to look back on this retrospectively, as if he had been a student or when he was a student?
Yeah, his craziness, his dark side, all occurred internally in his head. I think even though people thought he was weird, nobody would have guessed he had the kind of violent fantasies that he had. And so a person like this is very good at compartmentalizing, at keeping it buttoned up, and playing a very polite, appropriate role, certainly with a teacher who's an authority figure.
Yeah, that's the interesting part of this. And I remember we had the conversation earlier on about Howard Bloom has the article out where he theorized, did he do all of this in some crazy way to try and impress Catherine? Catherine had mentioned something yesterday with Brian Enton about it, being a little bit concerned looking back. Did he use what he was taught about the antisocial personality end of things, about how to plan a crime, how to investigate a crime? Is this someone who used that for all the wrong reasons? Not that it's something that should necessarily discourage her, but she did bring up, we hope that most people that go through this, they come out the other side and they are going to go use this for good. They're going to go be investigators. They're going to go work in law enforcement, investigative work, whatever have you. But every once in a while, there's going to be someone that comes through like this and uses it for the wrong reasons. When he set out to go down this path as being educated in criminal justice, do you think this was the goal? Was this a long-term goal of Kohberger's when he went down that road?
I have said that from the beginning, that there's a certain percentage of people who study criminology, forensic science, because they want to learn how to be a better criminal and how to get away with that. You even see that sometimes in people who become law enforcement officers. It's like, now I've got the power here. How can I wield this? How can I get away with it? How can I satiate my desire for beating people up and being a violent person? That's not the majority, but you do get people who go into it for the wrong reasons, and it's often not picked up if they're a good psychopath.
Yeah, clearly. What do you think is going through his mind right now? Is this genuine remorse that for what he did, and now he's finally coming out? Or is this the, I got caught, and as we talked earlier, it's this very mechanical thinking?
I think it's very mechanical. I don't think he's capable of remorse. Anybody capable of remorse would not have done a crime like this. My God, how awful. For sleeping college students, this guy doesn't have a conscience. He simply doesn't. I think his only remorse is that he left the damn knife sheath behind. He's probably perseverated on that one every day since.
Is this another thing we had talked about for a long time? Is this part of him basically getting what he wanted at the end of the day? He is now infamous. He is now up there with the likes of Bundy and the likes of BTK and all of that. And obviously, in his normal life, he was a very average dude for the most part, or less than. This is the one thing that he seemed to have grasped onto and feel in his mind that he was great at. Obviously not so much, but he's now in that chair, and he's now going to be studied. He's going to be interviewed. Who knows what he might do? He might write a book or something. He can't profit off of this. There's laws against that, but it doesn't mean he couldn't become someone who speaks and is studied. Even Catherine Ramsland just said with Brian Enton, she'd be interested in studying him and sitting down and talking with him and trying to get a grasp on how his thought processes worked. Do you think that's part of this? Do you think this is just, okay, he's making the best of whatever situation comes his way, and now he gets to be infamous?
100%. I think that was very, in large part, there were multiple reasons that he had these fantasies, but I think the fantasy of being a grandiose murderer in the leagues of Bundy and BTK, I think all along that was his goal. And there's a part of him that's enjoying it still, even, 4 life sentences. He's never going to be out again. In his mind, it was worth it to be a person who will never be forgotten.
Is it, what can we glean? What can be learned from someone like Kohberger, from someone who psychologically is going to study him, like a Catherine Ramsland? What are we looking for when we're looking at this retrospectively? Someone who has said, yep, I did it. Obviously, we can hear about his planning. We can hear about the logistics of what was done. But are we going to ever... This is one guy. Are there clues? Are there cues? Are there things we can learn from his behavior that can help prevent this and other potential Kohbergers out there that pop up every now and then? What can be gleaned by studying him further?
It's a really hard one. Can we dissect brains? I don't think we're very good at the neuroscience of this yet. There are indications that people that commit crimes like this, that are extremely psychopathic, their brains are different. They came out of the chute different. And can we hope to understand that better someday in some way? Definitely. I don't know if the science is there yet. But it's hard to look at the behavior and say, oh, well, here were red flags, because there are lots of weird guys out there. There are lots of guys that are stilted, awkward, don't know how to relate to women, can come off as offensive at times. But there really wasn't anything that would have stood out in this case that said this guy is going to become a mass murderer. I don't think we can spot those things.
Short of doing brain scans, which, I don't see that being anytime soon, but who knows? And even if you were to look at that, there has been research done and such that does look at some serial killers, and their brains do look a little bit different to a certain extent, but you can also find people who are not serial killers who have brains that are very similar as well.
Every brain has differences. And we do, from the studies with functional magnetic imagery, we do see that the brains of psychopaths have a very different structural connections between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. That's the empathy center. But a lot of people who do not become violent have brains like that. And we know that many psychopathic people go into politics and achieve great success or become salesmen and are very successful. So it's not like we can, brain scan everybody in the country and go, oh, let's designate the psychopaths here. So we've still got a lot to learn, a lot to work out. And certainly there are red flags. If you've got a young boy fascinated with violent pornography, that's of concern. You want to get that kid into treatment. If you've got a kid that's harming animals, especially, dogs and cats, not just hunting or things like that, but animals that most of us bond with, if they're cruel to animals, that's a red flag. But I don't know that we saw those things with him, and there can be all kinds of hidden things about him that nobody ever saw. So if he were to be studied further by someone like Catherine Ramsland or others, I hope that we can glean some information on, are there other ways we can intervene with people earlier in life?
As we close out this unnerving conversation with psychotherapist Siobhan Scott, I keep coming back to one haunting question. How does someone so outwardly ordinary conceal such profound darkness, even from experts, whose life work is understanding exactly that kind of darkness? They do. Because they do. Because they can. And because we're human. Because Catherine is human. It seems sometimes these folks are not. Catherine Ramsland's unsettling realization that a student she mentioned might have twisted her lessons on criminal psychology into a how-to guide for violence highlights a sobering reality about the limitations of human perception. We often confront ourselves by thinking evil wears a recognizable face. What happens when the face of danger blends in with everyday life hiding in plain sight? As Siobhan so eloquently reminded us, true psychopathy often doesn't announce itself with glaring warning signs. Instead, it moves quietly, learning, observing, calculating its next move in silence. It forces us to rethink how we recognize danger, to accept the uncomfortable truth that there may never be an exact roadmap for spotting a killer in training. Yet, as we've discussed today, perhaps the real value of studying someone like Kohberger isn't just about understanding him. It's about learning how to prevent the next Kohberger from slipping through the cracks. Can educators, psychologists, and law enforcement better screen or guide those who become too fixated on the darkness? Or must we accept that certain minds will always find ways to weaponize knowledge no matter how closely we watch? One thing is clear. Bryan Kohberger's story forces us to reckon with complexities we'd rather avoid, challenging our comfortable assumptions about who poses a threat and why. They're fine. They're just a little off. And as Catherine Ramsland herself continues wrestling with what she could have missed, we're reminded that when it comes to human psychology, even the experts can be fooled. Until next time, keep your eyes open and don't underestimate what might be lurking right in front of you. Again, comment section on YouTube. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Tell us what your thoughts are on this conversation. We do greatly appreciate it. And please do hit subscribe as well. Helps us grow the channel, and we always appreciate your input. Even an option there now for you, too. If you want to comment before everybody else, you can become a member of our YouTube channel and subscribe and get access to everything before everybody else and binge away. It's nice. It's there for you, ad-free as well. So check that out when you become a paying subscriber. But you can subscribe for free. You can get it all in your feed, and you can comment for free, too. But if you want that extra perk, the advanced and the way to speak early, that's there for you. We do greatly appreciate it if you can become a member. Until next time, for all of us here, I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Craving non-stop true crime updates? Press subscribe now and get the latest cases, analysis, and expert commentary delivered straight to your feed. Only from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.